Chapter 54-53. She truly couldn't understand what her disciple meant by calling the crown prince back to block the lightning. Why did he change so much these days when she wasn't around? She simply couldn't keep up with her little disciple's jumpy train of thought. She strolled around the vicinity and couldn't help but click her tongue in wonder. When she picked up a disciple in Shijo City back then, she had long known that he was a little nouveau riche. Seeing him today, she couldn't help but feel that her knowledge of her disciple back then was still too shallow. Arbor hopped out to look for her husband with her ink treasure in her arms, but she couldn't find him after looking around. Instead, that anxious roar called Saichi and Kai Xiao over. When they saw her anxious appearance, they hastily went up and said, "Crown Princess, did you forget? Today, His Highness the Crown Prince said that he will go to the Ministry of Justice's dungeon to interrogate City Lord Mu and his disciple, Guishuan, after court. He reckons that he won't be back until later." Xiao Mu patted her small head lightly. It seemed like her husband had mentioned it to her yesterday. However, she was in a daze at that time, so how could she have thought about it so much? She looked amiably at Saichi and Kai Xiao. "Then you two go busy yourselves." It was truly regretful that her husband wasn't in the Eastern Palace, so she couldn't find him to block the lightning for her son. She lowered her head to glance at the expressionless baby Mo and couldn't resist curling her lips at him. The latter's beady black eyes stared straight at her with sparkling eyes. His little appearance was so adorable that it melted her heart. When Arbor recalled how her husband disdained her son for being ugly yesterday, she couldn't resist pursing her small lips. How was her little baby ugly? He truly had no taste. He was so beautiful and adorable. When he grew up, he would definitely be the most beautiful baby in the world. "Son, don't disappoint me." The little stoic grasped her son's small paw and mumbled to him, "In the future, you must grow prettier than Daddy and mock him instead." The little fellow opened his mouth and yawned. The little stoic's eyes curved into crescents. Baby Mo was really adorable. She really wanted to poke him, but when she recalled how soft this child's entire body was, Sir Jojo restrained himself and withdrew his restless hand. "When you grow up a little more, Mother will bring you out to gain experience. We will travel all over the 3 continents and the Sea of Forgetfulness." Arbor paced back and forth in the bedroom with his son in his arms for a while. Suddenly, he stopped and hurriedly flashed back into the star field. Just now, she had been so focused on finding her husband to block the lightning that she had thrown her master into the star domain. At this moment, he suddenly remembered and hurriedly ran in to look for his master. "Master, master." The little stoic didn't find her master on Peach Blossom Slope, so she hastily used her divine perception to search the star domain. Finally, under a peach tree, she saw Murong Sun sleeping soundly while leaning against a tree branch. The little stoic jumped in fright and hastily walked over. She reflexively reached out to check if she was breathing. Who would have thought that Murong Sun would grab her hand before it could even touch her? He opened his eyes and grinned at her, his eyes sparkling. "Aya, my little disciple, don't tell me you think that your master is lying here dead." Bah! Arbor wanted to spit on her face. "Don't worry." Murong Sun stretched and stood up. She raised her hand to pat the little stoic's head. "I promise to let you take care of me for the rest of my life. Master definitely won't go back on her word." The little stoic's eyes reddened, and she glared at her several times, both annoyed and amused. This master of hers had never been proper. Every time she spoke, she would tease her. She didn't know which words were true and which were false. Chapter 54-54. Disciple, don't worry about Master. Although Master doesn't have any cultivation, Master can sense that Master's body has recovered quite well. Arbor nodded and took out 3 fruits of different sizes in one go, stuffing them all into Murong Sun's hands. Master, the flesh of the bloodshed vermilion fruit can improve one's constitution and prolong one's life. The biggest use of the core inside is to help people comprehend their spirit roots. Eat this first. Murong Sun lowered her head with a smile and glanced at the small fruit that glowed with a red light amidst the green color. She nodded repeatedly. Not only can the longevity fruit increase one's lifespan, but it can also rejuvenate one's youth and restore one's youthful appearance. It has the ability to retain one's youthful appearance. Arbor glanced at Murong Sun's unchanged appearance and pursed his lips. Master, you don't need to recover your appearance. Murong Sun was overjoyed when she heard this and touched her face before touching her little disciple's face. She laughed indecently and said, I didn't expect Master to have the ability to retain one's youthful appearance after sleeping for so long, ha 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 ha. As expected, it's hard to abandon one's natural beauty. Arbor, Master, can you be any more shameless? Murong Sun simply ignored her and stuffed another green fruit with a furry shell into her hands. This is a holy fruit. Take it, Master. She paused and suddenly asked dejectedly, does Master not have an inner world now? How is that possible? Murong Sun flicked her little head. What are you thinking about? Master's cultivation base has only dropped, it's not like I've lost all of my divine sense. Don't worry, with your Master's aptitude and ability, it won't take long even if I start learning from scratch and start from the mystic realm all the way up. After saying this, she accepted the 3 fruits with a smile and put them into her inner world before glancing at her little disciple with a chuckle. The little stoic's eyes brightened. Really, Master? Nonsense, why would Master lie to you? It's not the first time you've lied to me. Murong Sun rubbed her nose guiltily and earnestly said to the little stoic, good child, don't worry. Master won't lie to you in the future. Arbor's dejected mood slightly improved. Since Master could still use her inner world, it meant that at least she didn't start from scratch. If her divine sense was still intact, it should be relatively easy for her to slowly recover her cultivation in the future. Thinking of this, Arbor couldn't help but feel happy. Master. She tilted her head and said, did you know? I found a place with good feng shui in the Divine Province and built our holy water sect there. Do you want to go back and take a look? Murong Sun's fingers tightened, and she abruptly looked up at her youngest disciple, excitement in her voice. Really? Arbor nodded vigorously. Murong Sun hastily ran up to her and pulled her hand. Traitorous disciple, you're only telling Master about such an important matter now. Then what are we waiting for? Let's get going. Arbor couldn't help but laugh. He reached out and grabbed her. You just woke up. You need to recover well. Don't go anywhere for a while. Rest well and cultivate in our star field. As for second martial uncle and senior sister, don't worry. I've already sent them a message and told them to attend the 1-month-old celebration for the calligraphy treasure. They'll probably arrive in 2 days at the latest. Arbor's eyes brightened. Master, everyone will gather in Dragon Flame City very soon. She hadn't told second martial uncle and senior sister about her master waking up. Chapter 54-55. At that time, Jojo would definitely give them a huge fright and scare them into wailing in pain. Then the relationship is excellent, Murong Sun muttered to herself and nodded repeatedly, praising her for making good arrangements. Now that everyone has run to the capital, will the holy water sect's treasured feng shui land be snatched by others? What are you thinking, Master? The little stoic couldn't resist rolling her eyes at her. Even if someone wanted to barge into the sect, they would have to see if they could pass through the great array protecting the sect at the entrance, right? Moreover, even if they barged in, there would still be a huge surprise waiting for them afterward. It's fine, no treasured feng shui is more important than you guys. As long as the holy water sect was in good order, so what if the sect was robbed? At worst, they could seek revenge and fight back or change to a better treasured feng shui. Murong Sun nodded with a smile, her heart brimming with joy. How has your second Ant Master been recently? Not bad. Is she still dumb? Murong Sun asked while holding her little disciple's hand. Arbor, Master, how do you want me to answer your question? The little stoic thought about it and could only reply seriously, second Ant Master has grown up quite a bit. Murong Sun was startled, and all sorts of feelings involuntarily welled up in her heart. She was half sad and half moved. Even Yang Shirong, this dunce, had grown up. That's right. In that kind of situation, as the last senior in the Holy Water sect, she was forced to grow up and shoulder the heavy burden of the Holy Water sect, right? Master. The little stoic snuggled up to her and cautiously asked, You're not lying to me, right? What did Master lie to you about? Murong Sun really wanted to beat her up when she saw that deadpan stoic face so close to her. For example, although you woke up, your body's condition wasn't good, but you hid it from me. Murong Sun rolled her eyes. Or for example, you don't have long to live, but you weren't willing to tell me. For the rest of your life, you'll find a random excuse to leave and find a deserted island to spend the rest of your life alone. The little stoic stared at her master with bright eyes. Murong Sun dumbfoundedly glanced at her disciple and smacked her on the head. You darn child, is there anyone who curses their master like you? Let Master tell you, Master is fine. Don't even think about getting rid of me in the next 1 or 200 years. Wait for your master to gnaw on your bones and squeeze out your blood. Your master will definitely eat you until you're poor. The little stoic carefully studied her master's expression and discovered that she was magnanimous and didn't make any small movements of wanting to say something. She nodded her head in relief and wagged her little finger at her. Master, you have to be careful. If you lie to Jojo again, Jojo won't let you off. Murong Sun, why did this disciple of his seem a little perverted? She really wanted to ask her if she would let her go. If she really couldn't hold it in any longer and wanted to go down, could it be that this fellow would pull her out and give her a good beating? As soon as Murong Sun thought of this scene, she couldn't help but shudder and silently curse her traitorous disciple in her heart. Her little disciple was raised to be so obedient and adorable since she was young. Although she didn't like to talk, she was still filial. How did she become like this after a few years? This was definitely Crown Prince's most troublesome matter. She just knew that this black-hearted fellow couldn't teach a good child. Jojo married him so early and was imperceptibly influenced by this pervert. She really suffered a great loss. Chapter 54-56. On the way back to the palace, Prince Mo didn't know that Peak Master Murong had viciously scolded him in his mind again. If he knew, he would definitely be very stupefied. Prince Mo, whose status in the family was getting lower and lower, stumbled all the way back to the Eastern Palace. He didn't find his wife after searching everywhere, so he wanted to search in the Star Domain. Coincidentally, Jojo flashed out of the Star Domain and saw him foolishly take out a vine from his sleeve and call out to Chocho. The little stoic cracked her small mouth at him and quickly walked up with the baby, jumping into his arms. Jojo's Lien, how was the battle today? Speaking of going to the dungeon to refresh Mu Jinghong and Gui Xuan, Mo Lien couldn't help but snap out of her daze. I'm afraid we can't keep those two, Mo Lien said angrily. They didn't tell me half the truth and kept using lies to brush me off. I don't even have the patience to continue talking to them. Arbor nodded. Since you can't get anything out of them, don't go tomorrow either. However, Mo Lien was still a bit unwilling. He had to know the whereabouts of Chocho's last fragment in order to completely set his wife's mind at ease. Wife, don't worry. As long as Chocho's fragment is still near Dragonflame City, your husband will find it even if he has to turn over every inch of this land. The little tray ant was so moved that it sobbed behind them. Your Highness, I didn't expect you to treat Chocho so well. Normally, Chocho thinks you only know how to yell at Chocho, but I didn't expect your Highness to reveal your true feelings to Chocho at such a crucial time. Your Highness said to turn over every inch of land to find Chocho's fragment at all costs. Chocho was truly a bit moved. The Crown Prince, did Chocho misunderstand something? He wasn't doing it because he cared about his fragment. It was only because his wife longed for that fragment that he spared no effort to search for it. If Chocho had nothing to do with his wife, he wouldn't even bother to look at it as a synonym for black-bellied. The Crown Prince obviously would not correct the beautiful misunderstanding in Chocho's mind. He even reached out his hand full of emotions and stroked the little Trent's leafy head. Chocho, don't worry and leave it to me. I will definitely help you find the last fragment so that you can successfully fuse with it and restore the sacred wood completely. Okay. Chocho nodded gratefully, then turned to Arbor and said, Master, the Crown Prince is the best. Arbor glanced at the little tray ant speechlessly. This guy was so gullible. No wonder he was bullied by Jojo's lotus every time. Master Silver. The little tray ant jumped to Arbor's side and moved its thin branches. Arbor helplessly picked up his little body and glanced at his smiling husband. He couldn't help but criticize in his heart, little tree is also old but not wise. So stupid. 2 days later, Arbor received news early in the morning that the senior sisters from the Holy Water sect had arrived. She had already sent people to wait at the city gates of Dragonflame City. She would receive the news firsthand no matter which city gate the Ant Masters and senior sisters entered. After receiving the news, Jojo stuffed her son into the star domain and cheerfully brought Saishio and Saichi to pick them up. Jojo missed her senior sisters very much after not seeing them for a long time. Jojo was happy when she thought about how her Ant Masters and senior sisters could stay in Dragonflame City for a while. Her son's 1-month-old banquet was still more than 10 days away, so her sect members must be in a hurry to see her. Chapter 54-57. Otherwise, why would she come to reunite with her more than 10 days in advance? She must be thinking of Jojo. Arbor was very happy in her heart. She directly summoned the divine bird Qingwan and flew straight to the city gate with Kai Chi and Kai Xiu. Along the way, she couldn't suppress her excited mood and chatted with Kai Xiu and Kai Chi. Today, let's make a rich and delicious meal. I'll give you some ingredients later. Take it to the kitchen and let the kitchen add more dishes. Kai Chi and Kai Xiu's eyes lit up when they heard this. The two of them had been with the Crown Princess for so long, so they naturally knew that the ingredients that the little Crown Princess took out were all rare and precious things that couldn't be sold on the market. Tonight, the two of them could also eat their fill, so they were very happy. The Qingwan flew very quickly, and the journey was very smooth. When they arrived at the West City Gate, they saw an endless stream of people lining up to enter the city. There weren't many people leaving the city, only a few. Arbor saw the slender and delicate figure of senior sister Su Shanshan at a glance, and her eyes couldn't help but light up. But soon, she frowned, looking at the noisy scene below, and pursed her lips. The cry of the Qingwan attracted the attention of many people at the city gate. Many people couldn't help but look up. A young child excitedly pointed at the Qingwan in the air and shouted happily, "Big bird, it's a big bird." The child's mother hurriedly pulled her child back and reminded him, "Don't go, don't go." Such a big bird was like a god descending. The identity of the visitor was definitely not an ordinary person. If they accidentally bumped into such a noble person, then the lives of ordinary people like them wouldn't be enough to be chopped off even if they had 8 or 10 lives. After Arbor let the Qingwan fly lower, she put it away and pulled Kai Xiao and Kai Chi to quickly land. She turned and looked at the place where the crowd was gathered. Senior sister Su Shanshan's group had their backs to them, as if they were arguing with someone else. The two city gate guards seemed to be in a dilemma. They looked at Su Shanshan and the others, and then looked at some other people. Arbor's gaze fell on the people who were quarreling with Su Shanshan. They were a group of young women, all wearing moon-white dresses and white veils inlaid with pearls. When Arbor saw these people with white veils, his eyes couldn't help but become stern. Why were there such fools everywhere? She remembered that the holy maiden of Zhaoguang was also good at wearing a white veil when she pretended to be pretentious. Oh right, they would also scatter rose petals along the way to create the scene of a fairy descending. Looking at it, he felt that it was pretentious and disgusting. Then she looked at the group of sisters from the Holy Water sect. Each of them was dressed in cyan robes with long sleeves, and their postures were upright and neat. Even little Canon Fong Su's loud voice sounded much more pleasing to the ears than that group of orioles and swallows. Qiao Mu's gaze swept around, but she didn't see any trace of second Ant Master. She was slightly curious and walked over in that direction. As they got closer, the noise became even louder. The two city guards said helplessly, "Ladies, why don't we go to the side and have a proper discussion? Look, the people behind us have been waiting in line for a long time. We can't keep blocking the way, right?" Su Shanshan laughed brightly. "Apologies, little brother. Then we will go to the side to talk." The guard hastily nodded with a smile. However, while Su Shanshan and the others were easy to talk to, those fairies didn't want to give up just like that. Chapter 54-58. One of the masked women in white robes extended her hand to block in front of Su Shanshan and company. She sneered and said very rudely, "What, you want to just let it go after bumping into others? Don't you have a mouth and don't know how to apologize?" Little Canon Fong Su was so angry that she raised her scabbard and blocked in front of that woman. She roared angrily, "What are you doing? Woman, do you want to fight? You're pointing your sister." The city guards' hearts were about to turn cold. They had managed to persuade one group of grandmothers with great difficulty, but they didn't expect the other group to cause trouble. These grandmothers had been arguing here for almost half an hour. Some of the people queuing behind were already impatiently making a ruckus. If not for the fact that these girls didn't look like noble young misses from ordinary families, and all of them looked like cultivators with sabers and swords, the crowd would have already started making a ruckus. Everyone more or less still had a trace of reverence towards cultivators. Seeing the two groups of people making a ruckus, most people had the mindset that the less trouble the better. If they could wait a little longer, then they would wait a little longer. It didn't matter if it was temporary. But these two groups of women were quarreling endlessly. Especially that group of celestial maidens in white robes and veils. Why did they seem to be unforgiving when they were in the right? The other party had already agreed to go to the side to deal with the matter, but they still had to crowd around the city gate and make a ruckus. The group of girls in white robes had a large number of people, estimated to number in the hundreds. Did they not know what was going on when they continued to quarrel endlessly? Did they not know that they had already made people very unhappy by blocking the gate for so long? Most importantly, these women had no self-awareness at all. They were clearly dressed as celestial maidens, but when they quarreled, they were even fiercer than shrews. Seeing the two groups of people quarreling so fiercely, the faces of the two city guards also turned cold. One of them turned and said to the girl in white who was making the most of a ruckus, "This lady, can you go to the side to deal with your matter? Don't block the way in and out of the city. You are making it very difficult for us to deal with you like this." Unexpectedly, the girl in white robes immediately scowled and glared at the guard coldly. "Impudent! You dog slaves, is this how you receive the guests from Suhagua? Do you know the status of our princess? You are simply rude. Arbor walked past the noisy girl in white and quickly walked to Su Shanshan and company. Eldest senior sister. Su Shanshan heard the voice and turned around. Her eyes immediately revealed a joyful smile. Junior sister. Junior sister. All of the holy water sect's disciples simultaneously crowded around her, joy flashing across their faces. Little junior sister actually ran to the city gate to welcome them personally. From the looks of it, little junior sister must have missed each other very much like them. Hello, senior sisters. Qiao Mu's lips tugged into a rare smile, momentarily stupefying all the holy water sect sisters. One had to know that it was very rare for her junior sister to show a smile to others. A trace of disdain flashed in the eyes of the white-clothed woman who was leading the ruckus. She coldly interrupted, "Are you done acknowledging your relatives? Once you're done, come and settle the matter between us." Su Shanshan and the others silently glanced at their junior sister. As expected, the little stoic's originally smiling face froze in the blink of an eye. "I'm talking to senior sister, why are you interrupting? Who are you?" The little stoic coldly turned towards the woman in white who spoke. Chapter 54-59. That woman was clearly taken aback by the little stoic's attitude. She sized up the stoic face with a hard-to-conceal anger in her eyes. She looked at the woman in front of her. Her clothes were just a bit more luxurious and exquisite, but her small face was as exquisite and beautiful as jade. Unfortunately, her face was expressionless, and her entire person looked excessively icy. "And who are you? You dare to yell at us here? Is this how you treat your guests in the divine great land?" The city guards even broke out in a cold sweat when they glanced at her. After the little crown princess's repeated heroic deeds, it could be said that there was no one in the entire Dragon Flame city who didn't know this little stoic crown princess. Now that they saw this woman courting disaster in front of the crown princess, they couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. One of the city guards even took a few steps forward with a defeated expression. Just as he was about to speak, Arbor raised his hand to stop him. "Repeat yourself if you have the guts," the young crown prince consort said coldly. Her voice was crisp and clear, like the tinkling of beads falling on a jade plate. It made people's hearts tremble. That woman in white glanced at her timidly and actually didn't dare to repeat herself. This exquisite-looking woman in front of her really didn't look like someone to be trifled with. Those women beside her who were also wearing white veils also noticed some clues and felt that the little stoic didn't look like someone to be trifled with. They hastily stepped forward and advised in unison, "Chow chow, let it go. We came from afar as guests, so it's not good to fall out with our host. That's right, just treat it as your bad luck. Besides, Shue is fine. She was just pushed by someone, so don't be so angry." The little stoic couldn't help but fly into a rage. "Who are you calling Jojo?" Su Shanshan, the women surrounding Miss Chow Chow couldn't help but turn around to glance at Arbor in astonishment. Why did this stoic face suddenly get angry? Flames of fury rose in Arbor's heart, and he glared at that Miss Chow Chow with a sullen expression. That little appearance of his made it seem as if he wanted to tear the other person apart. His stare caused the other person's hair to stand on end, and the other person couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Little Canon Fong Su also scolded angrily, "You woman, how can you tarnish my little junior sister's reputation? A pretentious bitch like you dares to call yourself Jojo. You must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts." The group of white-robed female immortals looked dumbfoundedly at the holy water sex people who were filled with righteous indignation. Are these people idiots? What did it have to do with them what the sisters' names were? What did she mean by tarnishing her junior sister's reputation? What kind of inexplicable madness was this? Who are you people? Xiao Mu asked coldly with a dark face. The two guards hurriedly stepped forward. Reporting to the Crown Princess, these women in white are accompanying Princess Mingzhu of Suheguo to attend the little prince's one-month-old celebration. Crown Princess. Xiao Qiao and the others, who were originally pestering endlessly, couldn't help but have a slight change in expression when they heard this. This really was an extremely terrible encounter. Why would they encounter the Crown Princess at this shabby city gate? When that Miss Qiao Qiao recalled her previous disrespect, she couldn't help but tremble all over. Miss Qiao Qiao only felt that her throat was a bit dry, so she hastily stepped forward and whispered with a fawning smile, "Apologies, Crown Princess. Just now, we didn't know of your honorable identity. Please be magnanimous and forgive us for offending you." Could the little Crown Princess be a magnanimous person? This fellow asked with a sullen expression. Where are the Crown Princess' personal guards? Chapter 54-60. As soon as she finished speaking, several hundred pitch-black figures darted out from all directions and attacked those delicate white-clothed female immortals without a word. The hidden guards' movements weren't gentle at all. They directly yanked the veils on those white-clothed young ladies' faces and gave them a good beating before chasing them out of the city gate. The citizens lining up to enter the city were practically stupefied. Fortunately, the hidden guards acted with great propriety and tacitly chased the people out of the city, so it didn't cause an even greater commotion. Suheguo's female immortals couldn't help but be about to die from anger. They had never seen such a rude and unreasonable person who attacked them without a second word, wanting to throw them out of the city. How could their Suheguo suffer such a huge loss in front of everyone's eyes? How could these women not be so angry that their hearts ached? It was truly rare to see someone so rude and unreasonable when they were guests in someone else's home. Arbor criticized endlessly in her mind and glared at that Miss Qiao Qiao with disdain. Simply outrageous. She actually called herself Jojo like her. Little Canon Fong Su was right. Such a pretentious thing simply sullied her great name. She had to give her a beating and chase her out so that Sir Jojo wouldn't be displeased. She hated seeing people like the Saintess the most. Who was she trying to impress by walking out with a white veil? If she really cherished her appearance so much and didn't want to be seen by the general public, why didn't she freaking stay at home and not come out? She was afraid of being seen by others when she came out. Just how beautiful was she? Disgusting. Sir Jojo felt nauseous and vomited. Needless to say, Su Shanshan and the others couldn't help but cover their faces when they saw this familiar formula and familiar series of actions. So many years had passed, but the little Crown Princess was still so adorable. Su Shanshan and the others were simply about to die from laughing at the little stoic. Su Shanshan did her best to suppress the smile on her lips and walked up to hold her little junior sister's soft hand. "Jojo, don't be angry. Let's go back earlier. It's annoying to stand here for too long." "Eldest senior sister, how did you get into an argument with those idiots?" Fong Su, the little cannon, opened her mouth and started to attack. "It's all because of those pretentious immortals and saintesses who always pretend to be immortals and saintesses. They snatched the team to enter the city and accidentally bumped into our eldest senior sister. Then, they blindly said that we bumped into them. Nagging on and on, what the hell is so annoying? Then can't we beat them up and kick them out?" The little stoic blinked and made a chopping motion with her hand. "Or I might as well go all the way. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over." The corner of Su Shanshan's mouth twitched, and she hastily reached out to grab the little stoic's arm. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "Where exactly did you learn this from?" "Forget it, it's just a small matter." Su Shanshan smiled and said, "They are guests from afar. If we don't want to see them, we can just chase them away." Arbor nodded when he heard this. In his heart, He was still wondering, when did mother send an invitation to this Suhagwa? Could it be that they had received the news and rushed over to attend the full moon banquet? At least, in her impression, she had never heard of this Suhagwa. Jojo angrily thought, why did all kinds of cats and dogs want to come to the palace? That's right, senior sister, why don't I see second Aunt Master? Second Aunt Master went to buy wine to drink as soon as he entered the city. Su Shanshan couldn't resist rolling her eyes. That's truly too regretful. The little stoic looked at eldest senior sister with bright eyes. I have good news to tell you. Chapter 54-61. Oh, what's the good news? Su Shanshan and the rest looked at her with great interest. Unexpectedly, this junior martial sister's little stoic face was taut as she met their expectant gazes. Then, she strode forward. Forget it, I'll tell you when we return to the Eastern Palace. I don't want you to cry so loudly that you attract the city guards. People might think that I'm bullying you. Everyone, little junior sister, you'll lose us sooner or later if you do this. Seriously, this child was just saying that she was cute, but now she didn't seem cute at all. On the other side, Suhagwa's group of female fairies were thrown out of the city gate by the young crown princess's hidden guards. They were all in an extremely wretched state. Lady Chow Chow was so angry that her eyes turned red. She shouted sternly, You actually threw Suhagwa's group out of the city? Today, they had really embarrassed themselves in the sea of forgetfulness. Nothing could save them from losing face. Suhagwa's group of maidservants actually had their dignity trampled on by the crown princess of the divine land. They had just entered the sovereign capital and were mercilessly thrown out. This was simply infuriating. The satin in Lady Chow Chow's hand that she used to block attacks was cut into pieces by a hidden guard sword. Her eyes were almost spitting fire. This was too much. This was too much. Stop. Why aren't you stopping? A stern shout suddenly sounded. Amidst the commotion, the hidden guards ignored the woman's angry voice and directly threw out the hundreds of white-clothed female fairies. Among them, there were a dozen or so female fairies who were quite skilled. They weren't thrown out in the beginning. When the secret guards saw this, they couldn't do anything about it. They simply went up and beat him up before throwing him out. After this operation, the city guards were dumbfounded. The commotion had already alarmed the small leaders of the city guards. When they ran over to take a look, before they could even take a breath, they saw a black-clothed hidden guard walk up and flash a waste token at them. These small leaders of the city guards really sucked in a breath of cold air. This waste token was clearly the waste token of the Eastern Palace's master's personal guard. So these black-robed youths who suddenly attacked were from the Eastern Palace. There was a saying going around the entire imperial capital, don't mess with your crown prince. He's not someone you can mess with. Compared to the crown prince, your crown princess is even more difficult to deal with. The crown prince of the Eastern Palace's recent disregard of his own family had caused everyone in the imperial court to feel threatened. Everyone knew that the two fiends in the Eastern Palace were not to be trifled with. Thus, when they saw that it was the crown prince's personal guard, the two guards didn't say anything. They just bowed and cooperated. He even hurriedly called for a group of city guards to block Suhagwa and the others who wanted to enter and argue. Get out of the way. A cold voice sounded from behind the crowd. They saw a graceful young girl dressed in white and wearing a white veil standing at the city gate, staring at them coldly. I want to speak to your crown princess. The two hidden guards stretched out their arms to block her path like emotionless mechanical puppets. The white-veiled young girl looked at the young crown princess's back and couldn't help but shout angrily, Crown princess, if you chase out our Suhagwa's people like this, you won't be able to explain yourself to His Majesty. A trace of anger flashed across Chow Chow's eyes. Chapter 5462. She reached out to support an extremely frail masked woman who couldn't even take 2 breaths after taking 2 steps forward. The masked woman complained, "Princess, that woman is simply unreasonable. I think we should just take out the things and show them, lest others think that we don't have a backer and can be beaten and scolded as we wish." The white-veiled princess frowned and glanced coldly at Xiao Xiao. "Leave. Today's matter was truly too rash and impetuous. It was originally a small matter, but now the matter had been upgraded." Both sides were somewhat embarrassed. If the little crown princess heard the princess's thoughts, she would definitely snort and tell her, "I don't feel embarrassed, but you are really embarrassed." The woman walked up and shouted at the distant Xiao Mu, who was separated by a group of expressionless black-clothed hidden guards, "Crown Prince Consort, please wait. We are guests invited by old concubine Su. We are also old concubine Su's family. You rudely drove us out of the imperial city. Even if this matter is mentioned to old concubine, His Majesty, and the Empress, it's not justifiable." There was complete silence all around. The young lady shouted so loudly that even an ordinary person would have heard her clearly. Someone immediately whispered to each other as they asked with puzzlement in their eyes, "Who are they? They are so arrogant, daring to challenge Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort in public." Now in the entire Dragon Flame City, whether it was the common people, the officials in the capital, or the madams and misses of aristocratic families, who dared to provoke this little jinx, the Crown Princess. Weren't they afraid of being scolded? Weren't they afraid of being beaten until they couldn't find their bearings? Weren't they afraid of being beaten by the Crown Prince until they couldn't turn back? In such a situation, they were driven away by the Crown Princess, but they didn't get out of here obediently. Where did this Suheguo woman come from? How dare she provoke their Crown Princess again and again? There were also insiders who whispered, "I've heard about this Suheguo. It said that one of our former emperor's concubines came from Suheguo." No wonder. Just now, the woman said that they were old Princess Su's family. I'm afraid that she wanted to make friends with the Crown Princess. That person couldn't help but curl his lips. Who didn't know that the two from the Eastern Palace were ruthless people who didn't recognize their own family? Old concubine Su had nothing to do with them at all. Even if they were related, an aunt-like madam of the Ministry of State Security would still be sent to the 18th level of hell by the Crown Prince when she made a mistake. Therefore, this Princess Suheguo was still quite naive. She did not know how she would negotiate with the Crown Princess. Arbor frowned and stopped in his tracks. Su Shanshan glanced at her junior sister. Seeing that she was still expressionless, she could not help but say, "Junior sister, I've troubled you." If it wasn't for them, little junior sister wouldn't have fought with Suheguo's group. Now, the situation had become a little ugly. Since the other party had already introduced themselves, if little junior sister still ignored them, who knew if it would affect her when it got to the palace? Troublesome, the little stoic muttered. She clung onto Su Shanshan's arm and trotted back a few steps. The group stopped in front of Suheguo's white-veiled princess. The little stoic's gaze flitted across the princess's face. Chapter 5463. She only took a glance before immediately retracting her gaze. She shifted her gaze to the side and couldn't resist taking a few more glances at the maidservant standing next to the white-veiled princess. When the white-veiled princess saw that she had returned, she couldn't help but inwardly sigh in relief and was about to say a few gentle words. Just then, she heard the young crown princess ask crisply, "You? Who are you? This crown princess finds you a bit familiar. Have I seen you before?" The white-veiled princess was startled and turned to look at the personal maidservant following closely behind her. The other party had her head lowered apathetically, turning a deaf ear to the young crown princess's words. The little stoic knitted her brows and shot a severe gaze at the white-veiled princess. The white-veiled Princess Suheguo's heart couldn't help but thump fiercely, and she hastily explained, "Crown Princess, please calm down. This princess's personal maidservant is deaf and mute. She can't hear what the Crown Princess is saying." Arbor raised a brow. However, the little cannon Fong Su couldn't resist snickering. "Who are you trying to fool? You're a princess, yet you have a deaf and mute person by your side to serve you. Could it be that you two don't communicate normally? You don't need her to do anything for you. Could it be that the two of you have to gesticulate every day before you can match up to each other's needs?" This whatever princess spoke insincerely. She could tell she wasn't too honest with a glance. The little cannon Fong Su rambled on, "I think she's just guilty and doesn't dare to speak. She's afraid that our little junior sister will recognize her." The group of Suheguo maidservants next to the white-veiled princess were so angry that smoke was about to come out of their heads. Where exactly did these weirdos come from? What kind of maidservants did their princess choose to have by her side, and how she communicated with them? They were truly too meddlesome. The white-veiled princess also couldn't help but clamor in her mind, "Guilty my ass. What's wrong with her liking a deaf and mute maidservant? Does she need to be guilty?" Arbor sized up the deaf and mute maidservant from head to toe, and her brows creased slightly. It wasn't that she was deliberately looking for trouble and wanted to make things difficult for this Suheguo princess. The deaf-mute maidservant by her side gave her a sense of familiarity at first glance. Generally, there were only two kinds of people who left an impression on her: friends and family, enemies. Obviously, this person didn't seem like a relative. Therefore, Arbor couldn't help but be curious. He wanted to lift her veil and take a look. With this thought in mind, her hands moved even faster. She stretched out her 5 fingers and grabbed at the white veil on the deaf-mute's face. The white-veiled princess was shocked. She quickly reached out to block the little crown princess's claws and shouted, "What are you doing?" When Xiao Mu failed to grab her, she saw that woman lower her head and take a step back, and she sneered in her heart. "Men, remove the veils from these women's faces. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. These people really deserved a beating." The little stoic didn't have much patience to begin with, especially towards people she didn't like. Her patience quickly came to an end, and she directly ordered the hidden guards to take action, planning to end the battle quickly. Unexpectedly, after this order was passed down, all the Suheguo maidservants present simultaneously trembled and continuously retreated. As if they were about to be stripped naked and humiliated, shrill screams rose one after another. That young lady called Xiao Qiao was even more horrified. She pressed her hands firmly against the white veil on her face, and her entire body trembled as she wailed and howled. This series of actions stunned everyone present. Chapter 54-64. No one could understand what they were doing. Each and every one of them clutched the veils on their faces, as if they had done something unpardonable in Arbor. They were so ashamed and indignant that their eyes were red, as if they were about to die from being hit by a pillar. Sir Jojo had an innocent expression as he turned to meet Su Shanshan and the others' eyes in astonishment. He pointed at the shrieking Suheguo women and asked, "What's wrong with them?" Little Canon Fong Su seriously considered for a moment before saying hesitantly, "Could it be that their faces were all destroyed when they were born, so they're all extremely ugly and can't be seen in public? That's why they're so extreme and itching to fight with their lives on the line when they saw little junior sister giving the order to remove their veils." The little stoic looked at the chaos and felt that little Canon Fong Su's analysis was on point. She nodded with a look of sudden realization. No wonder these women are so delicate and pretentious, all wearing veils. So it's because they're ugly and can't be seen in public. Everyone couldn't help but twitch their mouths. Fuck, why did they inexplicably feel like the little crown princess's words were a bit harsh? Someone couldn't resist sneaking a glance at that Suheguo princess and saw that her eyes were bloodshot from anger under her veil. However, they heard the little crown princess say in deadly earnest, "Then it's not good to blame them too much. After all, in many of their eyes, a woman's appearance is greater than the heavens. If their ugly faces are exposed in front of others, it will indeed be very embarrassing for them." Little Canon Fong Su nodded. "Little junior sister, then let's not force them and forcefully remove their veils. Otherwise, if they can't face their ugly faces, it'll also be quite troublesome if rows of them seek death." The little crown princess made her decision on the spot and waved her hand to dismiss most of the hidden guards. "You're right. Since we know the reason, we can't force them like this. Other people have their own reasons for wearing a white veil to cover their faces," the little stoic said indifferently. "It can't be helped that they're ugly, so it's not good to be too harsh on them." Everyone, as they resisted the hidden guards and protected their veils, they also heard the crown princess and Fong Su speak of them like this. It angered those Suheguo ladies so much that they almost fainted. "Who's ugly? Your family is the ugly one who can't be seen in public and can only use a veil to cover your face." Was this crown prince consort an idiot? How could she come up with such a conclusion? This truly infuriated the ladies of the Suha kingdom so much that their hearts, livers, spleens, and lungs ached. They glared with burning eyes at the young crown prince consort. "You don't need to take off the others' veils, so just take hers." The little stoic pointed at the deaf-mute woman who was retreating backwards, her sharp eyes flickering slightly. "Even if you want to hide, you have to see if you can hide in front of her." The more she looked at the deaf-mute girl, the more she felt that she was very familiar. Just by looking at her sparkling eyes, she felt as if she had met her before. Who could it be that was masked but gave her a sense of familiarity? Arbor muttered in a low voice. He looked up at the deaf-mute girl who was being restrained by the secret guards and whose arms were being forcefully twisted. "Raise your head," Arbor shouted coldly. A royal guard then forcefully twisted the girl's face and raised it. Arbor reached out her small hand and gestured with her eyes. She stared at her evasive eyes from a distance and suddenly sneered, "So it's you. It's truly been a long time since Du Chunjiang left." Chapter 54-65. The Suha maidservant, whose chin was pinched, shuddered all over. Tears welled up in her eyes, as if she had suffered an enormous injustice and grievance. She kept twisting her body in an attempt to break free from the hidden guard's grip, biting her lips tightly without uttering a single word. Everyone was a bit confused, and their gazes simultaneously roamed back and forth between Chao Mu and this woman. "Crown Princess of China. Don't push it too far." Suha Nation's white-veiled princess was about to vomit blood from Arbor's domineering attitude. She clenched her fists tightly as she glared coldly at Chao Mu. She shouted angrily, "This is my, Suheguo's, maidservant. If I say that she doesn't understand etiquette and offends you, the crown prince consort. If you want to teach her a lesson, then this princess should be the one to do it. It's not up to outsiders to comment." Arbor didn't waste any more words with her. She looked up and coldly swept a glance over this Suha Nation's princess. She nodded. "Then you take off her veil." The little crown princess was too obsessed with this maidservant's veil. Suha Nation's white-veiled princess knitted her brows and couldn't help but ask furiously, "Crown princess, although Suha Nation's maidservant is a servant, she's still a servant of our Suha Nation. It has nothing to do with China, you're spouting so much nonsense. Are you going to take it off or not? I'm giving you face so you can take it off yourself. Do you really think you're someone important?" A cold glint appeared in the little crown princess's eyes, and the meaning she revealed was also very clear. Today, this Suha Nation's maidservant's veil had to be taken off whether she wanted to or not. She was going to take it off. The white-veiled princess took a deep breath and fiercely suppressed her bellyful of resentment. She tried her best to speak to this stoic face in a relatively steady voice. Our Suha nation's women must wear veils before marriage. This is our nation's custom. We hope that the crown princess will forgive us. Seeing Arbor take a step forward, the white-veiled princess of Suha also took a step forward and raised her hand in front of the maid. Her eyes flashed and she said coldly, "Could it be that the crown princess wants to take my maid back to the East Palace? Once the veil of our Suha state's women is lifted, they can only marry." The two secret guards silently retracted their hands and looked in the direction of the little crown princess. Arbor blinked and turned to look at Grand Senior Sister and Little Pow. What does she mean? I have to marry her just because I took off her veil? Everyone was speechless. Can't I, the crown princess, remove the veil? The crown princess can reveal it. A cold voice came from outside the crowd, accompanied by the sound of the wheels of the chariot. But my grandniece Sue has already made it very clear. If you take off her maid's veil, the crown princess, you must take her back to the East Palace. Please consider carefully, the crown princess. A woman wearing a beige robe walked down from the chariot with the help of someone. Her robe was embroidered with purple-blue flowers, and a pair of rose ruby earrings hung from her ears. Her lips were tightly pursed. This woman was about 40 years old, and her eyes were very cold and sharp. Xiao Mu glanced at her in bewilderment. Who is this person? Several secret guards couldn't help but twitch their mouths. They hurriedly walked up and whispered to Arbor. When Arbor heard that this person was Grand Concubine Sue, a trace of confusion flashed through her eyes. She had been in the palace for so long, but she had never heard of Grand Concubine Sue. She was stunned when someone suddenly walked up to her and said that she was the former emperor's concubine. Chapter 54-66. Grand Concubine Fong had some contact with them before. Since Empress Dowager Qin was killed, the former emperor's concubines were like invisible people and never came out again. Arbor looked Grand Concubine Sue up and down. Judging from her age, she was probably only 10 years old when she entered the palace, right? She was probably unlucky that the former emperor died not long after she entered the palace, so she had never heard of this person. Anyone who had a son or a daughter, even the unreliable old Prince Jian Pain, would have some filial piety. As long as the mother didn't die, after reporting to His Majesty, he would usually take his biological mother out of the palace to live and take care of her. This Grand Concubine Sue, judging from her tone, she was the grand-aunt of Suha State's white-veiled princess. Arbor looked at her again and didn't answer her. Her eyes were still coldly staring at Su Hegua's maidservant. Grand Concubine Sue said faintly, "Crown Princess, have you thought it through? This is the rule of our Suha state." Arbor looked up at her and sneered, "Grand Concubine Sue, have you forgotten that you have been married to Shenzhou State for decades? Isn't it too ridiculous to keep saying that Suha State's rules are rules?" Grand Concubine Sue didn't get angry. She glanced at Arbor and nodded gently, "Although I have been married to Shenzhou State for many years, I am still a person of Suha State. I'm just kindly reminding the Crown Princess not to be impulsive and bring unnecessary trouble to the East Palace. After all, the Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince have always been deeply in love. The Crown Princess doesn't want another woman to take away His Highness's favor." Arbor turned to look at Little Pow. What does she mean? Little Pow was about to die from anxiety and hurriedly said, "What else can she mean?" "This old woman means that as long as you remove the veil of Su Hegua's maidservant, His Highness the Crown Prince will follow you. This maid belongs to the Crown Prince. She must follow you back to the Eastern Palace." Arbor said, "Oh." Little Canon Fong Su didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her stoic face. She quickly grabbed her hand and said, "Little junior sister, don't fall for their tricks. How could Jojo be fooled? Arbor patted her hand to comfort her. After that, she turned to look in the direction of old concubine Sue and said coldly, "Open it." After receiving the Crown Princess's order, the two secret guards did not hesitate. Even if this ugly woman might rely on them in the future, they couldn't care less. The secret guard tore off the veil on the woman's face. Under the veil was a face the size of a palm. Although it wasn't very beautiful, it wasn't ugly either. However, this mediocre appearance caused Xiaomu to be slightly taken aback. She remembered that the Yaoguang Saintess's face was very delicate and pretty. It was definitely not the ordinary face in front of her. Old concubine Sue sneered, "The Crown Princess doesn't listen to other people's advice. Then I have to report it to His Majesty. Crown Princess, please take this maidservant back to the East Palace first." Arbor glanced at her and rolled her eyes. Suhugwa's rules are Suhugwa's rules. This Crown Princess's rules are Suhugwa's rules. I ignore all the rules of Suhugwa. Old concubine Sue's eyes widened and her aura was released. I have reminded the Crown Princess before. She is so arrogant and domineering. Even in front of His Majesty and Her Majesty, what the Crown Princess did today is not justified. Arbor glanced at her coldly. Chapter 54-67. Don't blame this Crown Princess for not reminding you. Colluding with someone from the Heavenly Fate realm, die. The young Crown Princess's words completely suppressed Grand Consort Sue's aura. Everyone present kept quiet out of fear and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They only felt that the little stoic's awe-inspiring appearance weighed heavily on their hearts. What do you mean? Grand Consort Sue's face was abnormally cold and furious, and she clenched her fists tightly inside her sleeves. The literal meaning. Arbor said coldly, "Don't tell me you think a mere transformation talisman can fool this Crown Princess. What do you take this Crown Princess for? And what do you take the entire divine province for? Little Suhegwo, you're ignorant and conceited. You're bound to bring about your own destruction." Grand Consort Sue's breathing stopped, and Princess Suhegwo couldn't help but shrink her neck. She hastily stepped forward and tugged at Grand Consort Sue's elbow. A female freak who willingly accepted transformation delusionally wants to enter the Eastern Palace. Arbor sneered and scolded rudely, "Your face must be as big as the sun, right?" Princess Suhegwo hastily said, "Crown Princess, don't make irresponsible remarks. What do you mean by that transformation talisman? Who used a transformation talisman? Whoever used it knows." Arbor flung her sleeves, and 3 talisman forces immediately burrowed out of her sleeves and pounced at the maidservant of Suhegwo who was continuously retreating. That maidservant nimbly dodged many times and somersaulted a few times in the air, barely evading the talisman's light. Just as she took a deep breath but didn't have time to exhale. Suddenly, a purple light abruptly leaped into her conscious. The transformation talisman's talisman force was removed too quickly, almost in the blink of an eye. The maidservant in front of her had simultaneously transformed her body, limbs, and appearance. Under everyone's watchful eyes in broad daylight, it was simply like a dramatic transformation of a living person was staged. Everyone was stupefied by this scene. Grand Consort Sue's complexion was especially ashen. She clenched her fists tightly as a bad premonition slid through her heart. Could it be that the current emperor of Suhegwo, her nephew, was unable to bear the pressure of fate and had already joined in? What should they do? Her palms were sweating profusely, and the cold sweat seemed to be free as it trickled down from her forehead. Old concubine Sue forced herself to calm down and said quickly, "Crown Princess, this matter still needs to be discussed." This maid should be the Suha country's white-veiled princess reacted very quickly. When she saw this change, she immediately screamed and revealed a look of disbelief. "What's going on?" Yao Yao, what is wrong with you? Your face is actually a fake face. Your height, Yao Guang's saintess recovered. She was much taller and slimmer than before. Most importantly, her ordinary face had become extremely beautiful and dazzling. After she had grown taller, her original clothes did not fit her body size at all. They all shrunk up to her wrists and ankles. Her clothes were too short. Nia Yaoguang, I thought you were dead. I didn't expect you to be so capable. You are still alive now. Not only was she alive, but she could even run in front of her and pretend to be dead. If she sneaked into the palace secretly, she didn't know what she would do. Nia Yaoguang was exposed, but she didn't panic at all. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.